Have you ever caught someone cheating and turned their manipulation against them? I found the text message on a Tuesday morning when my girlfriend Emma's phone buzzed on the bathroom counter while she was in the shower. The preview showed enough. A message from someone named Alex saying, "Last night was perfect. Can't wait to see you again Thursday." I stood there with her phone in my hand, steam from the shower fogging up the mirror, and made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. I took a photo of the message with my own phone, then put hers back exactly where she'd left it. When Emma came out wrapped in a towel, I kissed her good morning like nothing had changed. She smiled at me with those same warm eyes she'd always had, asked what I wanted for breakfast, mentioned she had late meetings on Thursday. I told her that was fine, that I had plans with my brother anyway. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched Emma's patterns shift in ways that felt rehearsed. She'd mention appointments that never appeared on her calendar. She'd take phone calls in another room, speaking in a voice that was slightly different from her normal tone. But here's what didn't make sense. Her location sharing never turned off. We'd set it up years ago for safety, and Emma's dot on my phone was always exactly where she said she'd be. Work, the gym, the grocery store. Even on Thursday when she claimed to have late meetings, her phone showed her at the office until 9 p.m. I started documenting everything. Screenshots of her location, photos of her calendar, notes about what she told me versus what I could verify. The pattern was perfect. Too perfect. Then I noticed the credit card charges. Small purchases at places near her office. Timing that matched her location data exactly. Coffee at 7 a.m., lunch at noon, gas near her usual route home. But our joint account showed other charges too. A hotel room downtown, dinner at an expensive restaurant, both on Thursday nights when her phone was definitely at the office. I called the hotel directly, said I needed to confirm a reservation for Emma Patterson. The front desk clerk said they had no reservation under that name, but they did have a standing weekly reservation under Alex Morrison, room 417, checked in every Thursday at 7 p.m. That's when I realized Emma wasn't the only one lying. Someone was using her location, her routine, her schedule as cover for something else. I checked our bank accounts more carefully and found small transfers I'd never noticed before. $50 here, $100 there, moving from our savings to an account I didn't recognize. I logged into Emma's email using the password she'd given me years ago for emergencies. What I found made my hands shake. Messages between Emma and someone named Victoria, discussing a business plan, talking about investments and returns and clients. They mentioned my name. They mentioned my salary, my savings, my inheritance from my grandmother. The Thursday meetings weren't about cheating. They were strategy sessions. The hotel room wasn't for romance. It was for meetings with other people, names I didn't recognize, discussing something they kept referring to as the project. I started finding weird things around our apartment. A second phone hidden in Emma's winter coat, USB drives taped under her desk, documents with financial projections that showed my name next to numbers that made me sick. I called my brother, who's a lawyer, and sent him everything I'd found. He called me back within an hour, his voice tight. He told me I needed to be very careful, that what Emma was doing wasn't just cheating, it was something much more serious. I started moving money quietly, opening new accounts Emma didn't know about, changing passwords, documenting every conversation we had. She had no idea I knew anything was wrong. Last Thursday, I told Emma I had to work late. Instead, I went to that hotel. I sat in the lobby and watched people come and go from the elevators. At 8 p.m., I saw Emma walk in with 3 other people I'd never seen before. They went up to the 4th floor. I followed them and stood outside room 417, recording audio on my phone. That's when I heard them discussing how much longer they needed to keep me convinced, how close they were to accessing the full amount, how I'd never see it coming. But I'd already called the police, and they were on their way. The rest of the story is on my channel or linked below. I hear the elevator doors open down the hallway, followed by the measured footsteps of multiple people approaching room 417. My phone continues recording as I press myself against the wall next to the door, heart hammering against my ribs. The voices inside grow louder, Emma discussing timelines, someone mentioning the inheritance phase of their plan. A female officer approaches first, nodding silently to acknowledge me before positioning herself on the opposite side of the door. 2 male officers stand directly in front, badges already visible. The lead detective, a stern-faced woman with salt and pepper hair, gives a 3 count with her fingers before knocking firmly. "Hotel management," she announces, her voice authoritative but calm. The room goes silent immediately. I hear shuffling papers, whispered instructions. "Just a minute," Emma's voice calls out, sounding nothing like the woman I thought I knew for years. The detective knocks again, harder this time. "Police, open the door now." More urgent whispers inside, then footsteps approaching. The door opens just enough for Emma to peek through. Her eyes widen when she sees the officers, then nearly pop out of her head when she spots me standing against the wall, phone in hand. "What's going on?" she asks, her voice perfectly calibrated to sound confused and innocent. "Step back and open the door fully," the detective orders. The officers push in as Emma retreats, revealing the scene inside. Victoria, whom I recognize from photos in Emma's emails, is frantically trying to close laptop screens while 2 men I've never seen before are shoving papers into briefcases. "Everyone stay where you are," the lead officer commands as the team enters. "Hands where we can see them." I remain in the hallway, still recording as the officers separate everyone. Emma keeps looking at me, her expression cycling through shock, anger, and finally, a calculated softness. "Baby, this is all a misunderstanding," she says, trying to approach me before an officer blocks her path. "I can explain everything." The detective turns to me. "Mr. Adams, I'm Detective Reyes. We'll need your statement and all the evidence you mentioned on the phone." I stop the recording and hand over my phone. It's all here, plus screenshots, bank records, and everything else I found at our apartment. Emma's face hardens as she realizes how thoroughly I've documented everything. "You went through my things? That's an invasion of privacy." Detective Reyes ignores her, examining the recording I've just provided. She plays a portion where Emma and her accomplices clearly discuss accessing the full amount and grandmother's estate transfer timeline. "Sounds like financial fraud to me," the detective says, nodding to her officers who begin reading rights to everyone in the room. Victoria, the blonde woman who'd been in all those email exchanges, suddenly looks terrified. "This was Emma's idea," she blurts out. "She's the one who found him, researched his family money. I just helped with the technical technical aspects. Shut up, Victoria, Emma hisses. The detective raises an eyebrow. Victoria, the mastermind behind what you all kept calling the project in these recordings? Emma attempts damage control. This is ridiculous. We're business partners discussing investments. My boyfriend here has completely misunderstood. Save it, Detective Reyes interrupts. We have enough probable cause for now. Everyone's coming to the station. As officers lead them out in handcuffs, I notice Emma's purse on the bed. Detective, I say, pointing to it. There's a second phone in there. It matches the one I found hidden in our apartment. The detective retrieves the phone, comparing it to the photos I'd taken of the hidden device. Identical, she confirms. And what about these USB drives you mentioned? I explain about the drives taped under Emma's desk at home. An officer is dispatched to secure them with the search warrant they've already prepared based on my initial call. 2 hours later, I'm at the police station providing my official statement. The detective shows me files recovered from Emma's laptop, detailed profiles on me, my family, my finances. There's a timeline labeled inheritance acquisition strategy that makes me feel physically ill. She was playing a long game, Detective Reyes explains. Based on what we're seeing, this was a sophisticated operation targeting your grandmother's inheritance specifically. They had detailed plans for accessing your accounts gradually, building trust, then making a major move once the inheritance cleared. My brother arrives with 2 attorneys from his firm. He hugs me tightly before introducing them as specialists in financial fraud cases. We'll handle everything, he assures me, his expression a mixture of anger and relief. You did the right thing catching this now. In the interview room across the hall, I catch a glimpse of Emma through the window. She's sitting perfectly still, her face composed, as if preparing for a performance. When she notices me looking, she mouths, "I'm sorry," with tears welling in her eyes. But I've seen the evidence now. I've heard her real voice on those recordings, planning how to take everything from me. I've seen the spreadsheets tracking my assets, the notes about my emotional vulnerabilities they could exploit. Detective Reyes returns with the USB drives from our apartment. These contain even more detailed plans, she says, scrolling through files on her computer. Bank account numbers, transfer protocols, identity documentation. Your girlfriend, or whatever she is, was planning to access your inheritance through a series of seemingly legitimate transfers. Very sophisticated stuff. My brother reviews the documents, his lawyer's eye-catching details I missed. They were planning to get married, he says quietly. There are draft prenuptial documents here designed to look standard, but with subtle clauses that would give her access to your accounts. I sit there, numb, as the full scope of Emma's betrayal comes into focus. Not just a cheater, but a calculated predator who spent months, maybe years, planning to strip me of everything. We'll need your official statement now, Detective Reyes says gently. Then, we can discuss protective measures for your accounts and identity. As I begin recounting everything from the beginning, I realize how close I came to losing it all. If I hadn't seen that text message that Tuesday morning, if I hadn't decided to investigate instead of confront. The thought makes me shudder as I sign the first page of my statement, the weight of Emma's betrayal settling over me like a shadow. The investigation shifts into high gear over the next few days. I'm sitting across from Detective Reyes in a small conference room at the police station, a stack of folders between us. My brother stands behind me, occasionally placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder when something particularly disturbing comes to light. We've confirmed what we suspected, Detective Reyes says, sliding a document toward me. Emma, or I should say Melissa, targeted you specifically because of your grandmother's inheritance. This wasn't random. I stare at the paper, a detailed profile of my financial situation, including projections of my grandmother's estate value. It's surreal seeing my life reduced to numbers and opportunity assessment. How did they even know about this? I ask, my voice hollow. Victoria has been cooperating, the detective explains. She claims their operation researches potential marks for months before making contact. In your case, they monitored obituaries, probate filings, even attended your grandmother's funeral to confirm details. The thought of them at my grandmother's funeral makes me physically ill. I remember Emma Melissa holding my hand that day, whispering comforting words while apparently calculating her potential payday. The location sharing app on her phone, Detective Reyes continues, was using spoofing technology. Those Thursday nights when you thought she was at her friend's place, she was setting up an elaborate digital trail while actually meeting with her team at the hotel. My brother interjects. We've been working with the prosecutor's office. They've identified 7 previous victims with nearly identical stories. 7? The number hits me like a punch to the gut. All men between 30 to 45 with recent or pending inheritances, he confirms. Same pattern, romantic relationship, slow financial integration, then a major asset grab. Detective Reyes opens another folder. Financial forensics show they've already siphoned approximately $27,000 from your accounts through various means. Small enough amounts to stay under the radar, but they add up. I think about all those times Emma insisted on handling bills because she was better organized. The joint account we'd opened 6 months ago that I rarely checked. The investment opportunity she'd suggested for a portion of my savings. What's happening with Emma Melissa now? I ask. She's still maintaining her innocence, Detective Reyes says with a hint of frustration. The prosecutor offered a plea deal, but she rejected it outright. Victoria, however, is singing like a canary to reduce her own sentence. My brother nods. Victoria's testimony is damning. She's detailed how Emma was the primary operator, how they selected you, how they planned everything down to the day. There's more, Detective Reyes says, pulling out another document. Alex Morrison isn't just a hotel reservation name. It's a shell company they use to launder funds from their operations. Those Thursday hotel meetings, they weren't just with Victoria. They were progress reports with other members of their network. My stomach churns as I process this. What network? A loosely organized fraud ring operating across multiple states, she explains. And Emma Patterson isn't her only alias. Her real name is Melissa Harrington. She's wanted in 3 states for similar scams. Detective Reyes slides a printout across the table, multiple mugshots of the woman I thought I loved, each with different hair colors and styles, but unmistakably her. Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Illinois all have outstanding warrants, she explains. explains. Different names, same scheme. You're actually lucky you caught on when you did. Based on their timeline documents, they were 3 months away from proposing marriage. I remember the prenuptial documents my brother mentioned finding on the USB drives. The careful planning makes me dizzy. What happens now? I ask. Victoria's cooperation has been invaluable. Detective Reyes says. She's provided names, dates, bank accounts, everything. She claims Emma recruited her 2 years ago, taught her the entire operation. My brother adds. The prosecutor is building a RICO case. This goes beyond simple fraud. It's organized crime. I think about all the moments that felt genuine. Emma's laugh when we watched stupid movies. Her hand in mine during walks. The way she listened when I talked about my grandmother's passing. Were any of those moments real? Or was every second calculated toward this end? There's something else you should see. Detective Reyes says hesitantly, pulling out her phone. Victoria gave us access to their shared cloud storage. This was a video from 3 months ago. She places the phone on the table and hits play. Emma Melissa sits in what looks like a hotel room, different from the one where she was arrested. Target update on Adams, she says clinically to someone off camera. Inheritance clearing probate next month. Approximately 1.2 million plus property. Timeline for full access estimated at 18 to 24 months post-marriage. He's completely trusting now. No prenup resistance expected. She smiles in the video, a smile I've seen countless times directed at me. He thinks I'm helping him process his grief. It's almost too easy. I push the phone away, unable to watch more. The calculated coldness in her voice, the voice I thought whispered words of love, is too much to bear. We'll need you to testify, Detective Reyes says gently. But with the evidence we have, plus Victoria's cooperation, this case is solid. My brother squeezes my shoulder. We'll get through this, and we'll make sure she can never do this to anyone else. As we leave the station, I feel a strange mixture of devastation and relief. The woman I loved never existed, but at least now I know the truth. The detective's words echo in my mind. She's wanted in 3 states. 3 states, 7 victims that they know of, and who knows how many others still out there believing the lies of a woman with many names but no heart. The court date is set for next Thursday. 3 weeks have passed since Emma's arrest, and she's refused all contact with me despite multiple attempts from her lawyer to arrange a meeting. Detective Reyes tells me this is standard manipulation, creating artificial scarcity to make me desperate for answers. She wants to control the narrative. Detective Reyes explains as we walk toward the courthouse for the preliminary hearing. Don't let her. My brother walks beside us, briefcase in hand, occasionally checking his phone for updates from his office. He's taken a surprising amount of time away from his practice to help with my case, something I'm deeply grateful for. Remember, he says, you don't have to look at her. You don't owe her anything. But when we enter the courtroom and I see Emma Melissa for the first time since her arrest, I can't look away. She's wearing a simple navy dress that makes her look smaller, more vulnerable. Her hair is pulled back in a modest style I've never seen her wear before. When our eyes meet, she gives me a small, sad smile that feels like a knife twisting in my chest. Classic presentation manipulation, my brother whispers, noticing my reaction. The outfit, the hair, it's all calculated. The hearing begins with the prosecution outlining charges: fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, and a host of financial crimes across multiple states. Emma sits perfectly still, occasionally whispering to her attorney, a sharp-featured woman in an expensive suit. When it's time for Emma to speak, she maintains the same story she's been telling since her arrest, that this is all a terrible misunderstanding, that our relationship was genuine, that Victoria manipulated her into certain conversations that sound damning out of context. Miss Harrington, the prosecutor says, deliberately using her real name. We have documentation of 7 previous victims across 3 states with nearly identical patterns of behavior. Are you suggesting all of these are misunderstandings as well? Emma's lawyer objects to the characterization, and they go back and forth in legal terminology that makes my head spin. Throughout it all, Emma occasionally glances at me with an expression of wounded betrayal, as if I'm the one who's done something wrong. The prosecution presents evidence that makes me sink lower in my seat. Screenshots of Emma discussing me with Victoria, referring to me as the inheritance target, and calculating timelines for maximum extraction. There are photos of Emma with other men, all looking as besotted with her as I once was, all now identified as previous victims. The defendant specifically targeted Mr. Adams after researching his grandmother's estate, the prosecutor explains, displaying a timeline that shows Emma beginning her research 3 months before we ever accidentally met at that coffee shop. I remember that day so vividly, how she'd bumped into me, spilling her latte, how we'd laughed about it, how natural it had felt exchanging numbers. It had all been staged, down to the book she was reading that matched one of my favorites listed on my public social media profile. Victoria is brought in to testify, looking pale and diminished in her orange jumpsuit. She avoids looking at Emma entirely, keeping her eyes fixed on the prosecutor as she describes their operation. Melissa recruited me 2 years ago, she explains, using Emma's real name. She had the system down to a science: how to identify targets with inheritance potential, how to create accidental meetings, how to pace the relationship for maximum financial gain. Victoria describes how Emma would study each target's psychological profile, learning their vulnerabilities and preferences to create the perfect girlfriend persona. With Mr. Adams, she noted his close relationship with his grandmother and his grief after her passing. She specifically positioned herself as supportive and understanding during that time to build trust. Emma's face remains impassive during Victoria's testimony, but I notice her hands tightening into fists under the table. When Victoria describes their Thursday hotel meetings, detailing how they would laugh about my trust and plan their next steps, Emma finally breaks. "That's a lie," she shouts, standing up so suddenly her chair topples backward. "Victoria is lying to save herself. I loved him." The judge orders her to sit down and control herself. Her lawyer whispers urgently in her ear, but Emma seems beyond reaching. Something has cracked in her carefully maintained facade. "I want to testify," she announces, ignoring her lawyer's visible alarm. Despite objections from her own counsel, Emma takes the stand. She starts with the same story, that she loved me, that this is all a misunderstanding, but the prosecutor methodically dismantles each claim with evidence. When he presents the video Detective Reyes showed me, where Emma coldly discusses my inheritance timeline, something shifts in her demeanor. Yes, I researched him, she finally admits, her voice hardening. Yes, I planned the meeting, but you don't understand what it's like to have nothing, to always be scrambling for security. The prosecutor presses further, and the truth comes pouring out in bitter fragments. Yes, she targeted me specifically after learning about my grandmother's estate. Yes, there was an 18-month plan culminating in marriage and then divorce. Yes, she intended to take half my assets plus access to my grandmother's inheritance through carefully structured legal arrangements. It wasn't personal, she says, looking directly at me. You were kind, and that made it easier, but it was never about you. It was about survival. Her words hit me like physical blows. All those nights I'd held her, all the secrets I'd shared, all the plans we'd made reduced to a financial transaction, a job. And the other 7 men? The prosecutor asks. Practice, Emma says flatly. Learning what worked, what didn't. The courtroom falls silent at her callousness. Even her lawyer looks stunned by the admission. Emma seems almost relieved to stop pretending, her posture straightening as she continues to detail her operation with clinical detachment. We had a system, she explains. Victoria handled technical aspects, account access, identity verification, digital footprints. I handled the relationships. It was efficient. When asked about her plans after securing my assets, Emma shrugs. Move on to the next target. There's always someone else with money and loneliness. The judge calls for a brief recess after Emma's testimony. In the hallway, Detective Reyes finds me sitting on a bench, trying to process what I've just heard. That wasn't what anyone expected, she says, sitting beside me. Her lawyer must be having a stroke right now. Why would she admit everything? I ask. Sometimes maintaining the lie becomes more exhausting than telling the truth, she explains. Or maybe she thinks honesty at this point might somehow mitigate her sentence. When court resumes, the judge denies Emma's bail request, citing her as a significant flight risk given her history of using multiple identities and the serious nature of the charges. As officers lead her away, she turns to look at me one last time. I'm sorry it had to be you, she says, loud enough for me to hear. You really were one of the good ones. I don't respond. There's nothing left to say to the woman who never existed. Outside the courthouse, my brother puts his arm around my shoulders. It's over, he says. She can't hurt you anymore. But as we walk to the car, I know that's not entirely true. The Emma I loved was a carefully crafted illusion, but my feelings for her were real. The betrayal has left wounds that won't heal quickly, if ever. What happens now? I ask Detective Reyes, who walks with us to the parking lot. Now we build the rest of the case, she says. With her confession and Victoria's testimony, it's looking at a significant sentence. Your part is mostly done. Mostly done. As if I can simply file away the past years of my life and move on. As we drive away from the courthouse, I watch it recede in the side mirror, wondering how many other people are sitting in courtrooms today, discovering that someone they loved never really existed at all. The sentencing hearing takes place in a packed courtroom. 9 years. That's what the judge gives Emma Melissa after reviewing the evidence, victim impact statements, and her own damning testimony. 9 years for fraud, identity theft, and a list of other charges that the judge reads in a monotone that somehow makes them sound even more clinical and calculated. The defendant has shown a pattern of predatory behavior targeting vulnerable individuals for financial gain, the judge says, peering over her glasses at Emma. The court finds this behavior particularly egregious given the emotional manipulation involved. Emma sits perfectly still as the sentence is delivered, her face a mask of composure. When she turns to look at me one last time before being led away, there's no trace of the woman I thought I knew, just a cold assessment, like she's calculating something even now. Victoria receives 3 years with possibility of parole after 18 months in exchange for her cooperation. When the prosecutor tells me this, I feel a flash of anger. It seems too light for someone who helped destroy so many lives, but Detective Reyes reminds me that Victoria's testimony was crucial in building the case. Without her, we might not have gotten the full 9 years for Melissa, she explains as we walk out of the courthouse, and we certainly wouldn't have leads on the other members of their network. My brother meets us outside, his legal pad filled with notes. He's been instrumental in helping me navigate the financial aftermath, working with forensic accountants to trace and recover most of the $27,000 Emma had already siphoned from my accounts. The civil case is looking strong, he tells me, referring to the separate proceedings we've initiated to recover damages. The judge granted the asset freeze on all her accounts, including the ones under her aliases. It's strange to think about money now. After everything, the grandmother's inheritance that Emma had targeted, the reason she chose me in the first place, seems almost tainted. Detective Reyes must sense my discomfort because she places a hand on my shoulder. This wasn't your fault, she says firmly. People like Melissa are professionals. They study their targets, create personas designed specifically to appeal to them. The fact that you caught on is remarkable. In the weeks following the sentencing, I find myself drawn to online forums where other victims of romance scams share their stories. The patterns are eerily similar: the careful research, the accidental meetings, the slow building of trust. I recognize Emma's techniques in so many of their stories that it makes my skin crawl. My brother notices my growing obsession with these cases and makes a suggestion that changes everything. We should create a foundation, he says one evening as we're reviewing the final recovery documents, something to help victims of these scams, provide resources, maybe even fund investigations. The idea takes root immediately. Within a month, we've established the Trust Recovery Foundation, using a portion of my grandmother's inheritance, the very money Emma had targeted to help others who weren't as fortunate as I was in discovering the truth before it was too late. Detective Reyes introduces me to other detectives specializing in financial fraud, and soon I'm speaking at police conferences about my experience. When the state legislature begins considering new laws specifically targeting romance fraud, I'm asked to testify. The psychological damage these scams cause goes far beyond the financial loss. I tell the committee, my voice steady despite the cameras and reporters. Victims lose not only their money, but their ability to trust, their sense of judgment, their confidence in their own perceptions. The committee members nod solemnly, taking notes. One senator asks about Emma's methods, how she she gained my trust so completely? She studied me, I explain. She knew what books I liked because she checked my social media. She knew about my relationship with my grandmother because she researched my family. Every coincidence was engineered, every shared interest researched in advance. Our entire relationship was based on data she'd collected about me. 3 months after the sentencing, I receive a letter from the Women's Correctional Facility where Emma is serving her time. Detective Reyes calls to warn me before it arrives. She sent similar letters to her previous victims, she explains. It's part of her pattern. Don't expect genuine remorse. The letter, when it comes, is exactly what Detective Reyes predicted, beautifully written, seemingly heartfelt, expressing deep regret and claiming profound personal change. Emma writes about therapy sessions in prison, about realizing the damage she's caused, about hoping someday for forgiveness. I bring it to my next meeting with Detective Reyes, who reads it with a grimace. Classic manipulation, she says, handing it back. And, unfortunately, I have evidence. It's completely fabricated. She shows me reports from prison staff indicating Emma has already been disciplined for attempting to run small scams inside the facility, using the prison phone system to contact potential marks on the outside through an elaborate system involving other inmates. She was planning her next operation within weeks of arriving, Detective Reyes explains. The rehabilitation story is just that, a story. Despite knowing this, the letter affects me more than I want to admit. There's something about seeing her handwriting, the familiar way she forms certain letters, that brings back a flood of memories, notes she'd leave in my lunch, birthday cards, shopping lists on our refrigerator, all part of the performance. The long con. 6 months after the sentencing, I go on my first date. My brother practically forces me into it, setting me up with a friend of his wife's who knows my whole story in advance. We meet for coffee, neutral territory, public setting, daytime hours, all Detective Reyes' recommendations for getting back out there. Lisa's kind and straightforward, a pediatric nurse with no patience for games. When I apologize for checking her name on public records databases before our date, another Detective Reyes recommendation, she laughs and tells me she did the same to me. Trust but verify, she says with a smile. That's the world we live in now. The date goes well enough that we agree to a second one, though I find myself analyzing every coincidence, every shared interest, with newfound suspicion. It's exhausting, this new vigilance, but Detective Reyes assures me it will become more balanced with time. You don't want to lose your capacity for trust entirely, she says when I meet her for our final official case meeting. That would mean Emma wins in the end. We're sitting in her office at the police station, the case files spread between us. She's closing the official investigation now that the sentencing is complete and all the evidence has been processed. The USB drives I found taped under Emma's desk, the second phone from her winter coat, the recordings from hotel room 417 all cataloged and filed away. What happens now? I ask, echoing the question I asked her that first day at the hotel. You keep going, she says simply. You build something new with what you've learned, and maybe you help others do the same. As I leave the station, I realize the weight on my shoulders feels different, not gone, but transformed into something I can carry forward rather than something dragging me down. Emma took years of my life, but she doesn't get to take my future too. The foundation is growing, helping others recover from similar scams. My brother jokes that grandmother would be proud of how her inheritance is being used, and I think he's right. When my phone rings, I see it's Lisa calling about our plans for dinner. I answer without hesitation, choosing trust, even knowing the risks. It's the only way forward.